Mayday, here. 72, we have smoke in the cabin.
Channel 72, contact, pilot maintain.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the March 2022 session of Galactic Terrors, the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, dark humor, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. That's right, fascinating genres only. Keep your boring genres to yourselves. And tonight we have a lineup of fascinating authors who are here to share their work with you. We welcome John C. Foster, L. Marie Wood, and John Palisano. And we're very excited to hear their stories tonight. How are you doing, Carol?
Great. Speaking of literary oddities, how are you, Jim?
I'm okay. As you can see, I came out of my hole for the evening.
Yes, it looks like signs of spring. Maybe. I'm not sure.
That's it. It depends on whether I see my shadow or not. I don't think it affects the weather, but it probably affects my upcoming deadlines.
Yes, Puxatani Jim.
Yes, exactly. But thank you all for joining us tonight for the newest session of Galactic Terrors. We're always happy to have you sign on, returning audience members especially, new audience members also especially. And if you are joining us for the first time, we're always interested to hear where you're tuning in from. So if you feel like it, just throw your location in the chat. We've had listeners from literally everywhere we can think of around the world, almost, not quite, but a lot of places. And it's always fun to hear.
Yes, indeed. And this time around, tell us if you're overseas outside of the U.S., especially because I'm just so impressed by people who figure out the time differences for us. So thank you for joining us.
So the Galactic Terrors reading series is sponsored by the New York chapter of the Horror Writers Association. And in honor of that, we're going to just share a little bit of Horror Writers Association news, mainly about StokerCon, StokerCon 2022, which is coming up. As I said to Brian Matthews the other day, we're in the home stretch, and Brian kind of looked at me funny. I mean, not really, because this was via email, but he kind of looked at me funny and said, I can't believe we're actually using the words home stretch for this. But if you are attending StokerCon or are interested in what's happening with StokerCon, keep your eyes open this weekend. We are going to be making some big announcements. We have some exciting stuff to share, updates, news, and information, and we expect to be sharing lots of cool information pretty regularly between now and the actual convention, which is this year a hybrid convention. We'll be in person in Denver in May 12th to the 15th, and we will also be online via Hop-In, as we did our virtual StokerCon last year. So if you can't get to Denver and you still want to take part in StokerCon, we've got you covered. Ooh, it's 1:05 in Scotland. Wendy, thank you so much I'm assuming that's AM, so thank you for staying up. If it's PM, I hope you're having a good lunch break.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So Carol, I think we were talking the other day about it being Women in Horror Month in March.
Yes, indeed. It's kind of an interesting thing that the Women in Horror Month movement has changed a lot over, the last dozen years. Originally, it was 1 month that everybody focused upon women in horror, but the decision was made by the group that sponsors it last year that we've got a lot of information out and about women in horror. We could talk about this every month if we wanted to. So people are a little bit more free to choose the month that suits their needs or they're used to pay attention. But March is not a bad time to do this, and that's also what Horror Writers Association has been doing. They've been doing a really cool series of interviews every day on the horror.org website, and it's pretty cool. A bunch of the people that we've already had on as readers have had their interviews up already, including Lee Murray, Lisa Morton, and Sarah Tatlinger. There's been interviews of them up. So that's been fun to see, and there's more to come for the rest of the month. So I'm looking forward to that.
So we have a special video to share for Women in Horror Month, don't we?
Yes. Several of us from the HWA New York chapter got together and we did a reading last month with our friends at the Syosset Public Library out in Long Island. And just like we did the previous year, I asked all of the participants to pick 5 books that they particularly recommended by women horror writers. So I put together a little video of it, and these are from Megan R. Curry, Amy Greck, myself, and Nicole Givens-Kurtz. So Jim, when you want to show it's short.
Yes.
And, let me just say also, I'm an amateur videographer. I'm nothing as good as Lou Rera, who does our opening work. Thank you, Lou, for making us look so good. So this is just for fun, okay?
Okay. But there are some really stellar book recommendations in here. So we'll play this, and then we'll jump right into our main events tonight.
Cool.
A really terrific list of books. So I'm sure, this happens every time we talk books on Galactic Terrors. Everybody's Amazon cart gets really expensive, and our to-be-read piles just grow another. What was the Grinch's heart grew three sizes that day? I think our TBR piles grow 3 sizes every time we talk books on. Online.
I think so. And one of the exciting things, I just have to point out that Nicole had recommended one of the books by L. Marie Wood, who is one of our readers tonight. So that's just perfect timing. So yay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to post that video and the list itself on our New York chapter Facebook page. So if anybody wants to see it, because that goes by too fast to write down. So
yes, it does. But
James just asked the same thing. Yeah, we'll put that up.
Cool. Excellent. All right. So I think it's time for us to get into the readings. What do you think?
Yeah, I think
All
that's a
right.
great idea.
So our first reader tonight, we welcome John C. Foster. John was born in Sleepy Hollow, New York, and has been afraid of the dark for as long as he can remember. He is the author of the crime thriller Rooster and 4 previous novels, The Isle, Dead Men, Night Roads, and Mr. White, as well as 1 collection of short stories, Baby Powder and Other Terrifying Substances. His stories have appeared in magazines and anthologies, including Dark Moon Digest, Strange Aeons, Dark Visions Volume 2, and Lost Films, among others. He lives in Brooklyn with the actress Linda Jones and their dog Coraline. For more information, please visit www.johnfosterfiction.com. All right. Welcome, John.
Hey everyone, I am John C. Foster coming to you from Brooklyn. And before I get started, I just want to assure everybody that despite my appearance, I am not of the undead. I've just had a cold for like 4 days, and I've had half a bottle of Robitussin to get me through this. So I think with your help and drugs, this will go all right. So I'm going to read a little bit of the opening from my forthcoming novel, Leech, which comes out in April and will actually debut at the first ever Ghoulish Book Festival in San Antonio. So Archibald Leech is the secret weapon Control unleashes when the fabric of reality tears and alien mathematics leak into our world. Control wields him like a barely understood instrument because Leech can see through the curtain, and it's enough to drive a man mad. It just gives you a little taste for it. Oh yeah, this is supposedly written in a Southern accent, but I'm going to try not to inflict that on you because it's not good if I do. Leech by John C. Foster, the first story. Low clouds scraped the tops of the Ozarks, and Leech hoped it wouldn't rain. He remembered learning how to tell the difference between the Wichitas and the Ozarks, what his granddad called the Hillbilly Hills. The Wichitas were proper mountains with something in the way of peaks, whereas the Ozarks has been pressed flat, as if God put down a hand and leaned his weight on them. The road narrowed and began to wind up the mountainside before Leech screeched to a stop, Bertha vibrating before the white and tan county sheriff's car pulled across the road. He keyed off the ignition and listened to her engine tick in time with the buzz of insects, dabbing the hollow of his throat with a handkerchief and chewing on a minty toothpick. He studied the side of the road and saw birds flitting among the coarse pines and bent oaks, the space beneath stuffed to bursting with rude shrubbery that would tear his linen suit to shreds. It was green with life and black with shadow, and resisted the existence of the road mere feet away. The deputy, who eventually emerged, was significant of belly, if not of height, and his boar's bristle of hair revealed rolls of fat at the back of his neck. If the mullet was designed with a particular man in mind, it was this deputy. Unfortunately, he deigned not to wear one. Who are you smiling at, boy? The deputy loomed at Leech's window, his gut threatening to come inside. Leech studied the belly before him, noting the strained buttons, the tiny black hairs curling through the diamond-like separations of fabric where the shirt strained the hardest. He wished the man had worn an undershirt, but realized it was awfully hot. You hear me, boy? The deputy stepped back a pace so he could stare Leech down with his mirrored sunglasses, inflating Leech's smile by surrendering on the second damn move of the game. Leech pushed his Panama hat back and flipped open his billfold to flash a little sunlight back at the deputy. Oh, well, yes, sir, the deputy said, that high school bully cop tone slinking away to be replaced by something unctuous. I didn't realize, I thought there'd be more of you. Trucks, hazmat suits, and all that. The local law raked his gaze up and down Bertha, noting the mosquitoes in the Lincoln's grill and the dust around the wheel wells. Aren't you a bit underfunded? A flick of the tongue fixed the minty length of wood dead center between Leech's front teeth, and he grinned around the wood. After an awkward pause, the deputy said, but don't you need? Son, what did they tell you happened up in Durable? That little lab up there had an outbreak. An outbreak. Right, the deputy said, missing the language lesson. Leach rested one pale sleeve on the windowsill and leaned out. Do you think they'd really tell you the truth? It's a cover story. It's a cover story. Leach was beginning to feel like a kid who pulled the legs off flies. He roused Bertha from her stupor, the big engine filling the air with an almost subsonic thrum. I'll just move my prowl car then. Thank you, deputy. Leach was grinning just a little bit as he drove past the county car and wound uphill, the lights coming to shadow as he climbed. He disliked those beady-eyed types, and while it was a flaw in his own character, found it hard not to tease them. The Battle of New Orleans bugled from his pocket, and he gave himself a mental kick for forgetting to call Karen. Bertha agreed to a stop, and he set the emergency brake before pushing the door open with a screech of hinges to let in a little more air. Hey, he said when the phone found his ear. A hot wind pushed the treetops alongside the road and caressed the beads of sweat on his brow. He sent a prayer of thanks to the inventor of linen suits. Fuck you. Sorry. I'm so sorry, baby, Karen's voice pleaded across the miles. Leach knew she was and said as much. You drinking, he asked. And she said not so much, and he said that was good. You ain't going somewhere dangerous, are you? Not to worry, honeybee, just some little hillbilly town where things have gone funny. Oh no, those inbred fellows will make you pregnant. I don't see you as the daddy type. I promise to use protection. She giggled. Got your gun? No, he lied. Not that kind of job. You got Bertha? Yes. Bertha's a good old gal and will take care of you. Always has. What are they calling you this time? Archibald Leach. He didn't tell her he'd chosen the name. Like Cary Grant, except with 2 E's. That's terrible. She laughed, and he touched the shiner beneath his left eye. It was a fair trade if he could keep hearing those sounds of joy. The conversation went the way of such things, and she was calmer at the end, promising to only drink a little bit more, which calmed him as well. Remember to take your pill, she said. They don't let me out unless I do, he said as if it was a joke and not a damn fact. My secret agent, man. Your secret agent, man. They said they loved each other, and he hung up, putting away the phone and drawing his Luger to check the magazine. He bent low, the movement awkward because of the steering wheel. His sensitive fingers felt over the twin-barreled Derringer on his right ankle and touched the coil of a wire garrote wrapped around his left. He sent a quick text message, and the red light on the dashboard lighter blinked green, unlocking the small, air-powered injector that had to be released from control. If he tried to do it himself, he had. A heating coil fried the dose. Geronimo, he muttered, and pressed the injector to his neck, grunting as it popped a load of activator into his system. He didn't know what chemicals were in the activator, some kind of formula more secret than the colonel's, but it burned the clozapine and risperidone from his veins like a fast-moving brush fire. The sweat dried on his forehead as his normal brain chemistry took hold. It usually took a minute, so he tapped the radio live and spun the dial through static to discover choices ranging from preaching to country music to preaching accompanied by country music. He pondered Bertha and Karen and thought himself a man gifted by the company of good women. Light flashed off the windshield, and he spurred the big Lincoln into motion. The scales were lifted from his eyes. Bertha obliged Leach by slowing when they drove around a bend and saw 3 people jumping up and down beside the road. In the middle was a hardscrabble woman in a shapeless house dress, displaying the squinty eyes common to these parts. Today, however, her peepers were as big as could be, and her lipless mouth was stretched wide enough to show the gaps in her teeth. She leapt up and down, attention fixed on something overhead. Bouncing on either side of her were a boy and girl in colorless hand-me-downs, neither more than 10. Fear ruled their faces. Afternoon, ma'am, Leach began when she laughed in his direction. Out of that car, son. Don't want to bang off the roof. As if on cue, a bright red cardinal smacked onto the Lincoln's black hood. Why are you all jumping around? Leach asked, pouring gravy over his words and ignoring the dead birds sprinkled over the asphalt. It's the rapture. We gonna be raptured. The woman jumped high enough that her children were jerked like fish on a line. Jump, children. Jump on up to his kingdom. Leach craned his neck out the window to study the gathering clouds overhead before taking a little video of the groups with his phone. He panned beyond them and zoomed in on the colorful spatter of a robin, Beyond that was the broken form of a crow. Jump, jump! Leach made the mistake of studying the little boy's face as his lips formed the words, help us. Try kicking off those shoes, Leach called out. Laura don't want your shoes in his kitchen. The woman stopped bouncing in place as her face blanked, then warped into another grin. Right, right. She kicked off her shoes. Get those shoes off, she screeched at her kids. Leach continued up the road. Until they were lost around the mechanical clock on Bertha's dashboard, and the green glow of the radium dials allowed that it was only 3 p.m., despite the deepening gloom. He thumbed his phone to text the video back to HQ. Among his many sins was a proclivity to text and drive. When the photos didn't send, he grimaced at the improbability. Bertha had a powerful Wi-Fi transmitter in her belly, and dispensing messages was not usually a problem. The tree line opened up to the right, and he muttered, all right then, as he cruised past a shadowy graveyard ringed by a tilting iron fence. A small crowd of people were digging at the graves and shattering tombstones with swinging shovels. One by one, their heads turned his way, faces distorted by extremities of emotion. Leach already knew that Durable was going crazy and didn't much care about their particular story, so he put his foot on the gas. And that's it.
Wow, John, I've got to say, you do some really cool things with your writing that I just love. When I read The Isle a little bit back, I didn't really know you very well, but I read the book and I'm like, oh, this is so good. I can't wait to talk to this guy. You know, and there were a couple like scenes and phrases, just the way you turned the words, it stuck in my head. And there's one, I don't remember the exact words, but it was about the guy who's driving a car like he was, you know, born to do it or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I like how little gems like that just jump in my mind. And in this one, his belly threatening to come in was like, oh my gosh, that's terrific. You know, because that really made me just picture exactly what you meant. So.
Yeah, I had fun with that, and I wanted to show because I really like this character. In fact, I think he's maybe the most fun protagonist that I want, but he's not all good, and he's kind of a prick. And so I actually removed a little bit of the sort of fat phobic stuff because at first he was really making fun of this guy. So it's like I left in enough that I thought, I hope we can see that he's kind of making fun of this guy in his mind, but without offending everyone who's reading it.
Yes, that's good. That's good. So you got the flavor and you took out the bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Less is more.
Less is more. Less is more. It seems to me that you write a bunch of different things. You know, I've read some of your horrible stuff, and then you have Rooster's more of a crime kind of novel. How do you feel about mixing up different genres?
I love mixing up different genres. I like, remember when you were a kid and you're 5 years old and you get like a little thing and you're supposed to like color inside the lines of a shape and it's like the number 5 or something. And I just scribbled all over the fucking thing. Excuse my French. And I write the same way. It's like I have trouble staying in a genre. So I love, in particular, I love blending noir in. But in this book, I had a lot of fun because it's a novel, but it's written as a series of short stories that could actually all be read alone. But if you read them in order, it's a contiguous novel. And so I got to have fun. This story that I open with is weird horror with some sci-fi in it. But I have some stuff in there that is straight up horror, you know, like scary running through the night from something chasing you. Exactly. That kind of stuff. I've got some more sci-fi stuff in there, dealing with like, you know, eons and eons ago before the dinosaurs appeared and stuff, ancient intelligences and all that sort of stuff. So I had a lot of fun because Leach is this very unstable character, as I hope I conveyed with all the pills and drugs he has to take.
Yes, and his injector triggering and all that.
Exactly. And he also, he doesn't quite understand who and what he is. And so through the course of the story, he gains more understanding of who and what he is. Yeah.
Okay. And so do we then as we go. Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of why he's special. And at the same time, Control, who he works for, is getting increasingly, they're not happy with him. And so there's
a little impatient. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're, they send out a guy with a Luger and a garrote, so you can tell what kind of agency they are.
Aha. Okay. That's secret. So now could you put a name to this kind of genre? I mean, is this a mosaic novel or a braided novel, or what do you think this is?
I actually, at first I called it a mosaic novel, but I was talking to Max Booth the third at Ghoulish, and I asked him, what the hell should we call this thing? And he just said, call it a novel. Just call it a novel. But at first I was calling it a mosaic novel.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, well, I like that you can jump around a little bit and such. No, that's pretty cool.
It was a lot of fun.
So there's a couple of questions in the chat that I'd like to pull up real quick if we could. Let's see. We had a good one from Teal, who's asking, did this character... He says, did this character come to you before the story or the other way around? It's so rich in such a few lines.
Oh, thank you. Well, there's a little story to that. This character actually came to me. I answered a sub call for an anthology called, I think it was Lost Signals. No.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing that.
Yeah. And I wrote this story, and then I wrote another short story for a different anthology. And after I finished, I realized, even though the other protagonist was different, this is the same guy. And so I went back to that story and I made him Leech. And there was a third story that I had written, the one with the ancient intelligences and a bunch of scientists and stuff like that. And I said, these are all the same guy. So I tweaked it and made him Leech again, and really started to flesh out, his relationship with Karen. And, he's her rock, but boy, is she his rock, because he is off, and then I took these to my crit group, and the nicest thing that anyone could say was, they loved him and they wanted to see more stories about Leech. And then I realized, because I didn't know what to do, I had 3 friggin' short stories about this guy. So I sort of put them in order, and I said, okay, what goes in between these stories? And I wrote,
and then you started doing this.
Yeah. And then I could take the stuff that I had learned later, to Teal's point, and then go back to the first story and make sure that I was layering in the beginning of the stuff. And I think, like with Karen and stuff, so we can make that arc happen and show their support for each other.
Cool. That makes sense. Well, Megan has a question for you as well.
Hey, Megan.
What type of research did you do, especially with respect to location?
Google. There are some of the places I'm familiar with, and some of the places. The last part of this is set in Alaska, so I had to do a lot of research on that.
Road trip. Oh, no.
Yeah, I wish. It's a long drive from New York. So it was, some of them I just knew what to do with it, and some I didn't know what to do with it, and some I could just make it up. It's like I grew up in a small town, so I could just manufacture a small town in a different state.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, thank you very much, John. This has been great to see a little snippet of it, and I look forward to reading more. We're going to ask you to come back on the end when all the authors come on, and we can all talk a little bit. But thank you for sharing your time and your talent so far.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, terrific. Glad to have you here. What I'd like to do is introduce our next reader. Elle Marie Wood is an award-winning psychological horror author and screenwriter. She won the Golden Stake Award for her novel, The Promise Keeper. Her screenplays have won Best Horror, Best Afrofuturism Horror Sci-Fi, and Best Screenplay Awards at several film festivals. Wood's short fiction has been published in groundbreaking works, including the Bram Stoker Award finalist anthology, Sycorax's Daughters. She's also the founder of the Speculative Fiction Academy, a professor and horror scholar. Learn more about Elle Marie Wood at elmariewood.com.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elle Marie Wood, and I'm honored to be here today to read the first chapter of my novel, The Realm. I was born in New York. I was born in Manhattan, but moved to Rockland County. Muncie was the name of my town, but it's now been renamed to Airmont, New York. And while I don't live there now, I still have lots of family in the Manhattan area. So The Realm is the first in the trilogy of books talking about what a person might do to save their family. As the series progresses, it expands past just the family. It expands to the whole world. And so you get to see the character Patrick, whom we'll meet in a moment, to determine what he's going to do and figure out, how does he save everyone? But first, how does he save himself? So without further ado, without me giving away too much, let's start with the very first chapter. It didn't happen the way they said it would. No angels came to greet him. No bright light funneled a path through the darkness. No relatives called to him from the beyond. He didn't feel warmth, acceptance, or love. He felt emptiness. He saw nothing in the moments before death, just an impenetrable darkness that crowded his vision like oil spreading in water, encroaching on the faces of his son and daughter-in-law, blackening them, obliterating them. He could hear them after his eyes dimmed, standing open and blind like black holes. His tear ducts dried up as his son cried over him. The sound of Doug's grief, the guttural moans roiling and meshing with his pleas, his barters with God to save his father, was more than Patrick could take. Trying but failing to lift his hand from his side and stroke his son's head, Patrick silently prayed that his hearing would dissipate as quickly as his sight had. Patrick could only imagine what Doug and Chris were seeing as his body broke down in front of them. Images of eyes ruined by broken capillaries filled with blood, his slacked mouth allowing a discolored tongue to peek through tortured his mind. He struggled for every breath now, death's grip holding fast and firm. The thought of the kids seeing him fight for air, his face a twisted mass of pain and effort, upset him more than he thought it would. Death was not pretty. Doug moaned and cried, and Chris cried, while Patrick's eyes grew drier and his skin grew paler. He thought it would never end, the display, the sick, cruel game death was playing. That he should witness it, that he should have to hear the calmness his son usually displayed crumble and fall away, was torture if ever there was a definition of the word. The devil, then. It was his work after all, he supposed. He was on his way to hell, and this was but a taste of what was to come. And then there was silence, utter silence. The sound of his son's anguish was gone, mercifully. The hum of the respirator, the clicking of the rosary beads the man in the next bed held, the squeak of rubber soles on the sanitized floor as the nurses and doctors hurried to his side, all sound had disappeared. He wondered what would be next to go. His memory? He quizzed himself just to see if it was already gone. What's my name? Patrick Richardson. How old am I? 59. Was is more like it, he corrected himself. After all, he was dead. Dead. Gone. Finished. Patrick stood in the pitch black silence, confused and unbelievably sad. He was dead. He would never see the baby that Chris was carrying, his first grandchild. He would never watch another boxing match with his son and friends over a beer and pizza. He wouldn't get the chance to watch the waves break on the shore from a beach chair in the Caribbean. He wouldn't do anything anymore, not eat, drink, or fuck ever again, because he was dead. and death was dark, impenetrably so. How did this happen? He asked aloud, using a mouth he could no longer feel. He thought back to that morning when he was taking out the garbage. He could remember walking to the back of his house and getting the garbage can. The damned cat had gotten into it again. The little stray he left food and water for had knocked the top of the can off, torn through the garbage bag, and gotten to the trash inside. The little monster made a hell of a mess, too, strewing soggy newspaper, chicken bones, and juice cartons all over the brick patio. Patrick remembered cursing out loud and casting his eyes around the backyard, looking for the cat. He remembered turning back to the bowl he'd left out the night before and finding it full of food. That was what you were supposed to eat, damn it, he'd said as he bent down to clean up the mess. On his way back to the house to get another garbage bag, a piece of the dream he had had the night before came back to him. It hung in front of his eyes like a transparency over real life, framing everything with the hazy film of familiarity, all soft edges and anticipation. Déjà vu. As usual, after those dreams, the dark ones that made him wonder if he was there, really there, walking, talking, living within them. He wondered if he was the character whose face the audience never sees. The memory was faint, as it always was the morning after, but he knew what happened next. This time, the scene was identical to his dream. There was usually something askew, some crucial piece off center, but this time, nothing was out of place. He knew he would turn away from the door instead of going inside to get the garbage bag. He knew he would squint from the sun when he did it, and that he would place his hand over his eyes, shading them like a visor. He knew it just as well as he knew his name, for as easily as that knowledge came, it dragged heavy fear and worry in its wake. He obliged. It wasn't like he had a choice. Patrick heard a shriek coming from next door, pulling him away from the dream world and into the land of the living with a jolt. It came from Mary Williams's house, an old lady who lived alone despite her diminished vision and limited use of her legs. She got along fine, though. She cooked her own meals and cleaned her own house. She hardly left anything for the day nurse to do. Spunky old girl, Patrick remembered thinking. I hope I'm as with it as she is when I get to be that old. Something cold took up residence in his stomach, grafting itself to his sides and pulsating there. The shrieking voice didn't sound like Mary's, though. It sounded younger, more vibrant, less gravelly and weathered with age. It was probably the day nurse, Jennifer. With a sigh, Patrick detoured from his front door, crossing his lawn to mount Mary's front steps. The old girl might have kicked the bucket, he thought as he approached the door. He felt genuinely saddened by the idea. The dream was dissipating, and Patrick was happy about that. Sure, he could still feel it playing along the edges of his consciousness, enticing him to come back and play, but it would lose this time and evermore. Patrick knocked on the door and called out to Jennifer, Mary's nurse, announcing himself. The door was ajar, and the force of his knuckles pushed it open. Patrick walked inside hesitantly, calling for Jennifer all the while, but there was no response. He called for Mary then, wondering if something had happened to the girl instead. Nothing. 2 steps into the foyer, and Patrick could see into the living room and dining room on the opposite side of the hallway. There was no one in sight. Patrick remembered thinking he should leave, thinking that he had been hearing things. But why didn't they answer? And why was the front door open? That Jennifer's car was in the driveway didn't register in his mind when it happened, but Patrick could remember it as clear as day as he recounted it. If he could do it all over again, he would do the same thing. He was sure of it. What happened was just meant to be. He went into the living room, intending to walk through the kitchen and into the family room. If they weren't in there, he would go upstairs and check the bedrooms and then the backyard. If he still couldn't find them, he would call the police. Mary rarely went out of the house, even with Jennifer's help. She enjoyed sitting in her backyard or in the window facing the road. Parks can't give me any more scenery than my backyard can, she always said, and I even get a glimpse of a handsome young man with his shirt off from time to time. Patrick snickered at the thought. At least he thought he did. Him? A handsome young man? Right. Young wasn't a word that was being used to describe him anymore, at least not by the women he dated. Distinguished? Maybe. Vibrant? Sure. Young? No. But he kept himself in shape, enough that he wasn't ashamed to walk around with his shirt off. The sun on his back always felt good to him, ever since he was a kid working in his yard with his dad. And hell, if you looked hard enough, you could almost see his six-pack hiding beneath that layer of skin that stubbornly refused to flatten out. So if Mary liked to sneak a peek at him, she could go right ahead. Patrick almost made it through the living room when the shot rang out. The bullet punctured his chest, immobilizing his left arm and driving him to the floor before he could take his next step. He never saw the man who shot him, never saw what he had done to Mary and Jennifer, their bodies tied to dining room chairs that lined the walls in the kitchen, out of view from the picture window in the family room. All he knew was the hot, searing pain in his chest that seemed to burn his insides and the blood that poured itself from the entry room wound to wet his skin with its warmth. Patrick remembered the feeling of the bullet tearing through his body, seeming to seek out a place to rest, to destroy. He woke up in the hospital to Doug and Chris's faces, tear-streaked and raw. There was more wrong with him than he thought. He could see it in Doug's eyes. His son, always the cool and collected one, always the optimist. He could find a silver lining in every cloud, but not this one. This time, he saw a rain cloud for what it was, knew the storm was coming, and when it was over, nothing would be the better for it. And then, where the hell was Joanne anyway? Wasn't she supposed to have met him at the pearly gates when he died? Patrick thought bitterly. Doug and Patrick had lost Joanne 10 years before to breast cancer. Patrick liked to imagine that she would be there waiting for him when it was his turn. He thought she would come for him, would ease him away from life, his pain dissipating as he looked into her beautiful eyes. That's what they said would happen. Those preachers he had listened to and believed over the years since Joanne had died. The ones he clung to desperately, needing to believe that they knew what they were talking about. So where was she? Where was his mother? His father? What about Joanne and Mary? They were dead too, weren't they? That's what Doug and Chris were talking about when he came to. He remembered hearing his son, his level-headed boy, cursing God for letting his father walk into that house. What about them? Surely they would come to greet the man who tried to help them, who died because he cared. But he was alone, in darkness. Anger coursed through him as he searched the pitch for something, someone. And then profound sadness overtook him as rapidly and completely as his anger had. His son would raise his child to remember his grandpa instead of actually knowing him. A prayer would be sent up for him on holidays and his birthday for as long as Doug was alive. But after that, there wouldn't be anyone left to remember. He would be just another headstone at a cemetery, overgrown with weeds, just an old picture in a dusty frame of a man his granddaughter and great-grandchildren would never know. Patrick had ceased to be. He felt lightheaded. No, he corrected himself. Lightheaded might be what he would have felt if he were still alive, still in the body that had walked the earth for 59 years. He longed to feel lightheaded. He wanted it so badly that he allowed himself to think it was what he really felt. But he realized with more poignancy than he would have liked that he didn't feel anything, nothing at all. And that's the end of chapter 1 of The Realm. Thank you so much for letting me read it for you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That's chapter 1, huh?
That's chapter 1.
Wow. That is gripping. Yeah, I was just, there's such an amazing sensory sort of aspect to the writing. I mean, it's really wonderful to listen to, and you just get kind of drawn right into it. And it's very evocative. Is that so? I have to ask: is that something you do consciously? Do you sort of sit down and think, how do I kind of weave this experience for the reader, or is that just your sort of natural storytelling mode?
It's my natural storytelling mode. I think about, what will impact me, and so when I'm thinking about the things that upset me or make me happy or frighten me, whatever it is, it's got to have that detail, or else it's relatively surface for me. You know what I mean? Some people can be afraid by or frightened by a jump scare, but they rarely get me. You've got to give me a little more meat. So I like to write that meat in, and sometimes it hurts. That first chapter is rough. I mean, it's so emotional, and it's I just reading it, I'm like in it, I'm like totally loving all of, the experience. And for me, getting drawn in early and feeling the emotions that the characters, going through and really becoming part of the story is what keeps me reading anything. So I try to recreate that in my writing.
That's great. Yeah, and it is such an emotional first chapter. I know we were joking before about every time we talk about books on Galactic Terrors, people's Amazon carts fill up. But I know I haven't read The Realm yet, but I have to see what happens next. So.
Oh wow! Thank you.
That was so engrossing. And that that struck me too. And it's really hard, I think, for writers or not for writers. It's just a hard thing to put that much emotion in the beginning of something and really have it connect with the reader, because they don't know the characters yet. They don't know the situation. They don't know what's at stake. But you did that beautifully here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like to make people care early. I mean,
Yes.
I don't know.
But I'm just going to share one comment, because this kind of says it all. I think this is from Jeff Oliver. Just fire. So thank you.
That's awesome.
So now you have written in a lot of different forms. This is a novel. You've written short fiction. You're also a screenwriter. And just glancing back at your bio, you won your novel, The Promise Keeper, won the Golden Stake Award. Now, I'm guessing maybe there's a vampire connection there.
Maybe, I don't know. Perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah. No, and believe it or not, I mean, this was the coolest thing ever. The award is literally a golden stake. It's like this. It looks like nice. And there's blood on the end. Oh, it's the most awesome looking thing ever. I'm not even kidding. I pick it up and threaten people with it because I can't. It's here. What else should I do with it? Right? It's I like psychological horror. That's what I do. Psychological horror with a fair helping of quiet horror there as well. But that doesn't mean that I don't like the traditional antagonists too. So The Promise Keeper is a psychological horror novel, but the vampire is the main character. So it's kind of interesting. It's like a little mashup of my loves, because I love vampires. Absolutely love them.
Yeah, and there's no reason you can't do a vampire story that's psychological horror. And like John was saying when he was talking, it's like, let's mash up the genres and mix and match things. And I think that works really well. Do you have a preference? Do you prefer short fiction, long fiction, or screenwriting? I mean, screenwriting is such a different mode of thinking and a voice than prose writing is. So do you like one better than the other? Do you have like one you consider home?
I do. Novels. I love the space that you have to create these characters, to do all these sorts of things to them, and then see how they come out on the other side. There's a lot of room to do that in novels, and I really, really enjoy it. When I write my short fiction, I really mean short fiction. I truly, I mean, we call that flash fiction, but for me, it doesn't matter. That's short. I like really not too many words, up to 1250 is where I go usually, and I'm usually really within the 900 word space. And I know that a lot of people really enjoy 3,000 words, 5,000 words, but for me, that's just, it's longer and it leans towards, well, should I develop this character into a full-length novel? But yes, in screenwriting, as you mentioned, it's a completely different animal. All of that descriptive language that I just went through wouldn't have even been in the screenplay. It would have been some short sentence or like 4 sentences saying, man in bed, he's dead, and and that's it. None of those things he's thinking would have happened at all. And that's the challenge with that medium, but that opens itself to dialogue being a really big driver, you know. So they're different, and I love them both, but I if I have to pick one, I would definitely say novels.
Novels. Okay. So in screenwriting, would you say dialogue is where you create the character?
Absolutely. Because your description, your action section that talks about what's happening with the character, positions them in the room, you know, tells their age, maybe gives a little description of what they look like. That's just placement, right? The
Right.
story unfolds in the dialogue. So you have to have these interactions that are meaningful. And yeah, can you do a movie without dialogue? Sure. I mean, we've
Yeah.
all seen A Quiet Place, and that was amazing, but that's also rare if you think about how many movies look like that. You know, most of the film comes out in the dialogue and why this individual is in this room yelling at someone, and then goes in another room and speaks sweetly to a child. You have to
Right.
get the 2 different personality types or characteristics really of the same individual and understand it based upon the way that they behave and what we can show you on screen, as opposed to what you can understand about their thinking process.
Right. We can't see inside their head.
You can't. And that's the thing that you have to cut out when you try to write a screenplay. None of these thoughts, unless the emotion can be shown on their face, you can't use it.
Yeah.
Difficult.
Cool. Well, we have some questions coming in from the audience. So we'll start with one from Kathleen Marshall. Where did the idea for this story and character come from?
I wish I had an answer for that. I can tell you where the story might have come from. The character, I don't know. But you know, I think I've always been fascinated with the concept of the afterlife. You know, what really happens. And we're all confronted with that at some point if we lose someone that, you know, we're very close to. But in my family, sadly, we had a death at least one death every single year for like 14 years running. You know,
Wow.
We had an older family, you know, so it was mostly older people, but still in all, there were, I said mostly, not every time. And I said at least one. There were some years we had many. And so, you know, you spend a lot of time going to funeral homes and you're hearing things and seeing things and you wonder, okay, you know, but who really knows what's going on? And what if it's not quite the same thing that we think we understand it to be? And from that point, I said, well, I could make something. And I'll tell you this right now, God help us if it's what I created, really. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. This first chapter is actually really, really nice and sweet compared to the rest of the book. I just don't want it to be that way. So, but you know, from that desire to explore my thoughts about what the afterlife could be like and then create something that was terrifying to me. Again, I try to frighten myself, which is not that hard to do for me. I might be quite the chicken, but the character Patrick, which is who we just met, he just kind of happened. He is not representative of any individual. He just was the guy I said, you know, and he's going to be the one who dies.
Okay. That's it. Sometimes you just have to make that call as the author.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. We have another question coming from Linda Addison.
Hi, Linda.
Did you know that this book would be book 1 of a series when you finished it?
No.
Okay. You faked this out there. You were nodding like, oh yeah, I knew that.
No, I did not. No, I absolutely did not. I thought this was a standalone book, right? And I loved it as a standalone book. Just loved it. And it's funny because I never even made the decision to have that be the case. And it's not that it was not a story that I wanted to continue to explore, but I mean, I felt that I put Patrick through quite enough, right? And so but you know, and we all understand, but sometimes we have conversations that sort of open our eyes to certain things. And it was brought to my attention that maybe there were some other things I could put him through.
Okay.
so I
That's it.
thought about that for a little while, and then I decided, okay, maybe I can. And then book 2 was an exploration of, all right, so we did this to him. What else are we going to do? And who else can we bring in here and do this to? The second book is called Cacophony, and it came out last year. And I knew that that was going to not be the last book. Now, so if we're wondering what I knew, I didn't know anything about the end of the realm moving forward. But when I got to Cacophony, I knew that there would be another. So
Okay. So at least
yeah,
one
it
more.
was a challenge that was issued to me, basically. Can you put this guy through some more? What else can you do? And I kind of said, well, let me think about it. And I found some other things.
Great. Okay. So there's 2 books in the series, one more to come.
One more to come.
Beyond
Yeah.
that is to be determined.
No, it's written.
But I mean, do you think there'll be a 4th book?
No. This
Okay.
this is a trilogy. Look, we have to let Patrick, we have to let him be at some point.
Got it.
No, this is a trilogy, and I like the way that this whole thing rounded itself out. It's really kind of beautiful. As impactful as that beginning is, the ending hits you very much the same way.
Okay.
So it's a really nice ending for them, and I'm kind of excited to see that happen. And that actually comes out at the end of this year. Well, October. So
Okay.
yeah,
Later
it's
this
kind of exciting. Book 3 is called
Okay.
Accursed. So it's kind of nice. I like it.
So I think we have time for one more quick question from the audience. And Megan has asked, can you please tell us more about the Speculative Fiction Academy?
Indeed, I can. So it's funny, if you talk to me long enough, you find out that I've got a million letters behind my name, and I love them all, right? I love it. I've enjoyed my whole process, but I still came out of school thinking, wow, I really wish I could have learned blah, blah, and blah, or,
Right.
had the opportunity to take these classes just to enjoy them, not necessarily, like romance classes. I would have loved to have taken more of that within my program. And so there's a point when you say to yourself, well, and I teach, at a community college and also at a couple of universities. And so I say, well, that's great. And I love horror fiction, and I'd love to merge my 2 loves, teaching and horror. And how do I do that? And at the same time, I'm thinking, great, I finished this program, but I think we could do more in terms of our education towards, speculative fiction. So the Speculative Fiction Academy grew legs, and it was just it was the natural, truly, it was really the next step for me, the natural progression in my thought process to go ahead and open up an academy that pulls in these oh my gosh, I can't even tell you, industry professionals, that award-winning folks, accomplished folks, people who've been doing it for years and years, know this stuff inside and out, and they're teaching fantasy courses and science fiction courses, of course, horror, right? Film, podcasting, romance courses, all the stuff I wanted to take. It's the degree that I would have gotten. Like, if I could have gone to this school, I would have gone here. So it's that grad program that you really would love to have taken. And I just am so honored that people are involved in it, the people that are there. It's fantastic. So
That's awesome.
Thank you for asking about that. That's so cool.
Where can people find out more about that online?
Oh, sure. Just go to speculativeacademy.com. If I'm my own school, I gave you the wrong URL. Speculativefictionacademy.com. We can type that in, but speculativefictionacademy.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So I think this was great. Thank you, Lisa. We're going to come back at the end to talk about what you have coming up next, although you've given us a little preview. Yeah, that's it. All right. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Our next reader for the evening is John Palisano. John's nonfiction, short fiction, poetry, and novels have appeared in literary anthologies and magazines such as Cemetery Dance, Fangoria, Weird Tales, Space and Time, Shmoop University, and many more. He won the Bram Stoker Award for Excellence in Short Fiction in 2016 and is currently serving as president of the Horror Writers Association. Say hi to John at johnpalisano.com. Welcome, John.
All right. Good evening, everybody. It's really amazing to be here. I'm going to be reading a story tonight called Long Walk Home. I'm going to be playing some music in the background that I composed, so Jim and Carol don't have to worry. I own the copyright on it. So without further ado. Long Walk Home. Our world falls. Black ash blows from the sea and sticks to cars and houses like sticky, toxic kudzu. Swirling, pastel-tinted clouds streak across Ocean City's gray skies. Ozone-flavored rain wets my lips and moistens my cheeks. Gold-tinted memories loop inside my head. Danielle smiling, Danielle laughing, her son Andy wiggling in his high chair. The little guy giggles, dangling his plastic green spoon over his head, with me nearby, never feeling more at home. There's still hope left in finding them, but it's fleeting. The chemicals that mixed with the seawater had brewed a toxic soup unlike anything FEMA had previously seen. Not only had our allies turned on us near the end of the war, they'd been our worst enemy, unleashing deadly germs into our water supply. On top of everything, they'd gotten a lucky natural sucker punch. Hurricane George hit the East Coast 3 days later with 120-mile-per-hour winds, and our little peninsula took the brunt. Poison penetrated everywhere. Sewers overflowed. Safe water became scarce. Food supplies quickly diminished. Those that didn't die from the initial exposure soon fell ill from what we nicknamed the sludge. The National Guard cut us off while the government seemed to be waiting for us to die. No more work down the pier for me. No endless nights of music. No faithful friends. Everyone that meant something to me vanished. Right before the phones and lights stopped working, we heard whispers. Get out of Ocean City if you can. Head to the Meadowlands. There'll be convoys and trucks and National Guard to tell you what to do. You'll be safe at the arena. It's just off the Jersey Turnpike. I didn't trust it. Too easy. With too many people in one place. If I were responsible for the attack, it'd be perfect. Take everyone out at the same time. Wipe your hands clean of them. That's why choosing behind felt right. It just isn't me either. There were other people, lurkers, looking, like sharks smelling blood from miles away. You can feel it. Your nerves fire and your guts know a lurker's close. The sludge leaked onto our beautiful island beach, turning the shore red and black. The sand stained my white shoes with oxblood splotches. Get out of this stuff. Walk faster, I thought. Danielle's place is just a few blocks up on Waterway Road. You'll be safe. Danielle Ross wandered onto the pier one warm August night and waved a flyer toward me. What time did the band start? Tonight? I asked. The openers come on at about 8. She squinted and pointed at me. Didn't you go to Martin College? Evan Stevenson, right? That's right. Danielle Ross. She put her hand out. I recognized her name and her bright blue eyes. We went to high school together. Danielle told me she was married, married until recently, and she had a 3-year-old boy named Andy to show for it. We're right on Waterway. The clubhouse lagoon's in back of me. You can see the harbor. There was a southern accent in her voice I didn't remember. She explained how she'd moved down to North Carolina right after elementary school, went to college at University of Tennessee, and decided to move back close to her parents. The entire time, I couldn't look away. Magic fire oozed from my fingertips. My throat tightened. Instinctively, I knew things would move forward, and she'd be okay. It started with a couple of beers, and we kissed that night, and things became hot and heavy over the next 2 weeks. But then she pulled back, freaked out, and got nervous. Didn't want to jump back into something serious again. And we took a break. The Atlantic turns jet black at night, especially with no ambient artificial light. The full moon overhead glows through toxic clouds hanging over our sky, blankets the streets with diffused orange hues. You could smell the light saltwater breeze mixed with a sickly sweet industrial, crude oil-like stench. The sludge is everywhere. The leftover poison lingers in the air and tickles the back of your throat. The civilized world only exists in pockets around the perimeter, and you don't want to get caught alone by the lurkers. I sweat heavily and pull my shirt out and find my own smell and filth hard to take. My black jeans feel tight and sticky in the worst way. If only I could take a shower. But all the utilities in the area are shut down after the accidents. No running water, no oil, no gas, no nothing. Just candlelight and survival. I look up at the towering, colorful plumes reaching up like huge bonfires. Please be home. Don't leave me out here by myself, where there's nothing left. Carefully, I stepped onto her porch and pressed the handle on the screen door. I opened it and took a breath before I knocked 3 times. There was no answer. I waited a moment and knocked again. I looked to my right and I looked to my left and saw no signs of life. Nothing. Her curtains were open and I pressed my face against the glass and peered inside but couldn't see any lights. Danielle kept a spare key under a plant on her porch. The first time she showed me, I told her I thought it was dangerous. Somebody could easily get in, and she laughed it off. She said she didn't have anything worth stealing. I had to follow my instinct. Too many things could have gone wrong. She could be hurt. One of the lurkers could have been inside and had gotten her. I hurried to the front door and I unlocked it with the key and slipped in and turned to slide the door back in place. And once inside, I relocked the deadbolt and headed for the foyer. Danielle, hello? Are you here? She didn't answer, and my instinct immediately told me I was alone in the house. I craned my head up the stairs to see if there was anything or any lights. Maybe hear a radio. Nothing. And I made my way to the living room. And everything looked recently lived in. There was a stack of half-opened mail on the coffee table. Nothing looked tussled. It didn't look like there'd been any kind of struggle. Well, that was good. The stove was cool. There was no gas smell. Everything looked okay, but something distracted me. Danielle's jean jacket with the embroidered rose hung from the back of her dining room chair, and chills rose up my body as I reached out. It was like it was her, and I was grabbing the arms and wishing it really was. And was she there? Was she close? Had she been hurt? I reached into the pockets on the inside and found them empty, which was good. Danielle liked to find things and keep them. And I heard a voice in my head as I caught my breath. I heard her voice. I heard her voice. I've left my voice. I've left my purse too many places, too many times. It's easier. I remember asking her what she did when the weather became too hot to wear a jean jacket. And she laughed and said, "When's it ever too hot to wear a jean jacket?" I stood up, and it was only then that I noticed the folded piece of paper on the dining room table. One corner had been tucked under the salt and pepper shakers. Evan. That's me. Evan. The handwriting was flowery, as if she were passing me a note in middle school. She'd put a line to the right side and crossed it vertically in the middle, and I opened it. Hey, Evan, I bet you're wondering why I'd think to put this letter on the dining room table instead of on my door. Well, I asked myself what'd you do, and I remembered you knew where my key was. I couldn't call you. All the lines are dead. Even my cell won't work. There was a group of National Guardmen that came and told us we have to go. There are buses coming for everyone tomorrow night. Not sure where they're taking us, but it's off this island. They're picking us up at the Route 52 causeway. I think you know where the bridge is. I really hope you find this and I can see you hold Andy again real soon. I'm sorry about everything, by the way. These things make people look at the big picture, don't they? Maybe I was too hasty about us. Love, Danielle. I slipped the note into my pocket and went out the door. Okay, we're going to stop there on the story on a cliffhanger. So that's the beginning of Long Walk Home.
What's going to happen next, John?
Bad stuff.
And what music are you going to play? That was awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Wonderful, John. Thank you so much.
You bet. You bet.
So now you did you compose the music that you read to?
Yeah. For a lot of my work, I actually, when I'm brainstorming and writing, I actually will compose music for the stories and books. So this is a rare one. I don't usually like to play it for people because I want them to kind of have their own ideas of things. But for me, it kind of puts me in a mood and into like a psyche to like write.
I think it put our audience certainly in the right mood for it too. You're getting a lot of great comments on the music.
Oh, great. Cool.
Amy called it hypnotic.
Yeah.
Nicholas just gave you the devil horns.
All right. Well, that means a lot from Nick.
So that really is your own personal playlist. Really, really personal playlist.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So John, so this is part of a short story.
Yeah, it was probably the first third of the short story Long Walk Home.
Okay. And you have the collection out.
All That Withers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is in there.
Okay. All right. So that's where people can find it to find out what happens next. But you've also written novels.
Oh, yeah. Tons of novels, tons of short stories. I think over 50 short stories published, a couple of novels. Okay.
And so do you have a preference which form you prefer to write in?
No, I love both of them. And, I also love poetry and songwriting, and I love writing nonfiction too, and scripts. I think it's all good. I enjoy it all.
I think it's really intriguing that we have two folks talking about movies and scripts on the show tonight. Elle Marie Wood was talking about what you have to leave out when you write a script, but I got to listen to your Horror University talk, and I know Jim did either because he was running the show. But I was really intrigued where you talked about when you're writing, doing character development just the same way an actor would, as if they're preparing to act the role. So Elmarie Wood was talking to us about the screenwriting side, and you're talking about prepping like an actor. Is that something that you did for this, thinking about what this guy was going through?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, at the time of writing this, I was actually down there a lot. My first wife is from just around the corner. So we spent a lot of time down there. And we were kind of down there when Hurricane Sandy hit and everything went out. And, of course, as a writer, your imagination's going, wow, like what is happening? And what if, this is some kind of like, what if it's not just a hurricane? What's going on here?
Is there a bigger purpose? Ooh.
Right. And one of the things, comments I get a lot is that when people read my stories, they think, oh, that's you. But through the character development, it's really not me. And I take that as a big compliment because I try to really go through and, develop these characters so they're real in 3D, but it's not my story, it's their story.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're creating this character in their world.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So you create the music as part of writing the stories. And so that's an interesting piece of your creative process. You also, Carol was asking about the way you develop characters. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes when you're writing something that the reader never sees.
For sure.
Do you feel like you put a lot of work into that portion of the writing process?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And even for a short story, I do a tremendous amount of work. Sometimes I do almost as much work developing a short story as a novel.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy that process. For me, I like that process of building these worlds and making them fully immersive to me. Maybe it's because I don't quite have the imagination. Maybe I have to kind of make this stuff so I can really kind of visualize and hear it and think it. Who knows? So
would you say you know more about the characters in their world than actually ever makes it into the story?
Definitely.
Okay. So that gives us an interesting segue for a question from Nicholas. Unless Carol, did you have another question?
No, go right ahead. It's a good idea.
Now I'm not familiar with this by title. I'm guessing this is one of your stories, John. But Nicholas wants to know the genesis of Lucky Chuck Takes the Sunshine Express.
Wow. Okay. That was That was actually I was taking a bus ride to Las Vegas to appear for promotion for my first big book, Dust of the Dead. And as I was there, it was the craziest bus ride. It was one of those like dollar bus things that they booked me on, and it was like the Creature Cantina in Star Wars in there. I thought I was going to read, and I'd be cool. I'd have 2 or 3 hours on the bus to read a book and be, oh no. This was like people were having fights. They were singing songs. They were going crazy. And I thought, well, what if we're not going to Vegas? What if we're going to, they're going to take us to an off-road, because I thought this is too crazy to be real. I was convinced they were going to take a side road and like throw us into, some pit with a monster or something, or kill us all or something, or fight to the death. I was just like, man. And that's, Nick, that's where it started.
You're going to wind up in the bar from dusk till dawn or something
right?
like that. Right.
Totally.
And in the background, we hear that do. Yeah.
So continuing along the line of where stories come from and sort of the creative process, Megan is asking, did the story inform the music or vice versa? That's interesting. Do you ever write music before you start the story?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll have a small germ of an idea for a story, and I'll start playing the guitar, or I'll get my synthesizer out and I'll just start thinking and going, what does this world sound like? What is the music? What is the theme? If this were a movie, how would it sound? And from there, as I'm playing the music, my mind starts to build things, and I can build the music and the themes, and the characters start to kind of come into focus.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting is in movies they use that as a technique where certain characters have a theme, and you hear a few bars of something when they appear on screen to kind of, it's their signature. Do you look at it working for you that way? Like the characters have their theme song?
In a couple of the bigger books, definitely they definitely have their themes. In my very first novel that was published, Nerves, there's actually a they go and find an old R&B singer who had a kind of a hit album, but he's kind of playing theaters now in small. And the songs were so integral. And one of the main song that he was known for, I had to write that song and play it and record it and do the whole thing. So yeah, every time, and then I would think about that song when he would come into the room, and just the theme, and the other characters, people who didn't know him, they'd see him go, oh yeah, that, and you're like, so you really kind of had to know like what that music was.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever heard that. I recorded an entire album of music for that band, and nobody's ever heard that.
Wow.
Plus the themes from the book.
Yeah.
I just saw Studio 666 with Foo Fighters doing the horror movie. It was incredible. I mean, some of the acting is, you don't expect every band member to be a great actor, but it's one of the few times that I've actually wanted to get the soundtrack to the movie, because it's all these great songs that they did. It was really cool.
Well, I've got to see it. I'm dying to see it.
It's worth it. It's just going out of theaters in this area now, but it will be on streaming, I'm sure. So
I'm
check
sure,
it out.
Definitely.
Excellent. And then I think you mentioned this, John, but Teal had just asked quickly, how long is that story? So you think you said you read about a third of it?
About a third, yeah. It's about 5,000 words.
Okay.
Memory serves.
Got it. All right. And I think we have one more question from the audience, and then we'll have our other readers come back on to join us. This one is from James Ryan. Have you ever written music just for its own sake, without it influencing any writing?
Sure.
Tell us more.
I've been playing in bands since I was 13. So
about 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, about 10.
Yeah.
Exactly. 10 like dog years or something.
Dog
years. But tons of music. I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs over the years. And
cool.
Tons of music that had nothing to do with writing. So yeah,
Excellent.
For sure.
Awesome.
Have you ever written like a rock and roll story?
Oh yeah, there's plenty of them.
Okay. I know you wrote one. I can't remember the title of it. And I remember the main character was a musician, and there was it was a long time ago I read it, but there was some kind of like enormous entity that he saw out his window, like becoming the landscape.
Right, that was in the Geminis.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And
I've done so many of my stories have music or are musicians or based on that. I could do a collection just on musical themed stories.
That's
Yes,
cool.
please.
And I think the very first one that I ever published professionally, probably my first professionally published story was called Wings for Wheels, which was in a anthology of stories based on Springsteen songs.
Oh, neat.
And I got assigned Thunder Road, and I was just like, how am I going to make like Grease, like horror? You know, it was like, how do I do this? And then there's that great line in there, you know, there were ghosts in their eyes, and there it is. There we go. There we go. So,
All right.
Cool.
Well, yeah, that would be really cool if you did a collection of your musical horror stories. At some
I
point.
vote yes.
all right, let's do it.
Carol's on board.
Publishers out there, hit me up. Let's do it.
All right, so I think we're going to bring John and Lisa back, and
All right.
we want to hear what you guys have coming up next. So,
Oh yeah, Linda says a collection of music discs. Yeah.
yeah, and I want to thank John for joining us tonight, despite being under the weather.
Yeah.
You know, we this is not you know the Robitussin was not a product placement, but
I'm sure that's Robitussin. Yes.
that throws a little bit there. But we appreciate.
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm excited to do it. This is too much fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I haven't seen everybody in so long.
Yeah. Well, speaking of seeing folks, I have 3 amusing things to tell you folks. I know that John Foster, speaking of seeing him, will be at KGB Bar next week, right?
Right. Yes. Yep.
And with the Fantastic Fiction Group. Now, Elle Marie Wood, you just told us you're in Airmont. I didn't realize that's where you were. I live 14 minutes away from you, lady.
Oh no, I'm from Airmont. I
You're
am
from Airmont.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
I got confused. I got all
Originally.
excited.
I know, no, I'm nowhere near Airmont now.
Okay, I got confused. Okay, well, the other weird thing, John, your story was talking about overlooking the Meadowlands. I live very near there now, and I actually used to live in Karlstadt, and my bedroom window overlooked the Meadowlands. So
Wow.
yeah, so cool. So I felt a little called out tonight. So I should have paid better attention to it, to what Elle Marie Wood was saying. So. Well, but what do you guys? So we know John's going to be reading at KGB. What do you guys have coming up? What's on the plate for you? Any cool books or things that you're doing? What?
Who, me?
You? Yeah, start with you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Leech, the novel, is coming out in April at the Ghoulish Book Festival. I'm in the draft phase of a novel called Spite House, which I'm waiting for the beta readers to tell me, is it a psychological thriller or psychological horror? Because I don't know.
Okay.
And I'm sitting on another crime novel, a second crime novel, and a horror novel. Sometimes I work on multiple things at the same time, and I don't want to release too much at the same time. So that's what I've got. That's what I've got coming out.
Oh, that's exciting. Elle Marie, how about you?
That is actually really cool. It feels good when you're like productive. You know, you've got some words coming, and it feels really nice to have that happening. So good for you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, interestingly enough, I have a novella / screenplay thing coming out in a week, 5 days.
Oh,
March
nice.
5th. We're 15th. Yeah, that's pretty. I'm so excited about that. It's like a novella length story, and then the screenplay, which is a feature length screenplay that I wrote, the same story. And the screenplay's been in the festival circuit for a little while. It's done pretty well. And there was a novella before all that began. So that's kind of fun. I'm excited about that. So
Cool.
that's coming out in just a couple days.
What's the title?
What was that?
What's the title?
Oh, I thought I said it. Sorry. I'm so excited about the thing. The Black Hole.
Oh, okay.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's very neat. And the cover, oh my gosh, you guys, you have to see the cover. It's really
Yeah.
that cover is great. That's coming out from Mocha Memoirs Press in like 5 days.
That's awesome.
Yay.
And I'm so pumped. But then like on its heels, just because of the way the world has been, right? On its heels, my very first novel that relates to any way, shape, or form having any romantic elements at all is coming out. It's called The Tryst. It's mind you, it's still psychological horror, but there are romance elements, there's mystery and thriller mixed in there as well. It's like this experimental cool thing. That's the first book of a saga that will go for however many long. I don't know. I don't know.
Oh.
But yeah, it's book one.
That's
That
intriguing.
comes out in March 25th. It's just the way the world worked out. So,
Yeah.
Very nice.
you know, a little bit of a bump there, but that's kind of fun too, though.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So those are
Always
the
would all the
immediate-
time. Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
A quick question: have you adapted any other of your books into screenplays?
I have. I've done it once, and it's a rough thing. So my first novel is called Crescendo,
Mm-hmm.
and I wrote that novel years ago and loved it. I still love it. And then I wrote a screenplay, and I love it. It's different, but you know the phrase "kill your darlings." You really do. Boy, do you have to like. Oh my gosh, there's so much slicing and dicing. You know, to play on words there, right? But no, you really have to reduce. I mean, because again, all of that descriptive language and all the things that are happening in someone's mind, you can't actually use. You can't show that. So, yeah, it was fun, and I felt it was gratifying when it was finished, and you know, it was like nice to have tried that. But yeah, I don't know that I'll do that again. But I'm just saying.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Have you ever done the reverse and adapted a script into a novel?
No, I have not, but I think I should try it because that might be kind of fun. I have this one that I love, and it's Inexorable. It's my most recent screenplay, and it's so neat that I really feel like I should dive into each of those characters and write a book. So yeah, I'm thinking of it. I really am.
You should definitely do it because The Isle that Carol mentioned earlier started as a screenplay, and Rooster, the crime novel that came out, was a screenplay. So
Oh,
it's
I
yeah.
didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a fun
What?
process. You really get to kind of just explode,
Mhm.
and both those stories change radically. But it's
I'm just
really
thinking of The
fun.
Isle as a screenplay. Hold on. Wait a minute. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Sorry. That was,
Neat. Oh, that's neat. I should try it.
yeah.
Very cool.
Well, what about you, Mr. P?
Oh,
What's coming up?
you're going to hear it here first.
All right.
There is a re-release of my novel Dust of the Dead coming out in time for StokerCon by Heinlein and Sons from Germany. And I just saw the temp cover art, and oh my God, I'm just so excited about that. So that's the very next thing that I've been working on and we'll be bringing to the world.
Oh,
Very
very
nice.
More of the undead. The zombies hit Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
awesome.
They still want their Starbucks.
Cool.
What the heck? What's wrong with these people? Even in death. No.
Yeah. Well, Jim, we have something coming up, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yeah. Carol and I recently co-edited an anthology of ghost stories called Even in the Grave that is coming out this in a few months. Yeah,
July 1 is the official release. Yeah. And may I just say, I'm wearing my official Lynn Hansen t-shirt because we have a really cool Lynn Hansen cover for the book.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Wow.
So we're
Nice.
really excited about that. And the publisher eSpec Books did a Kickstarter campaign to promote it and add on some extras and things like that. So we had a lot of fun with it, and we've been living with that book for a long time. So I'm very happy to see it.
That's a nice way to say it. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, terrific.
Right.
Well, listen, I put up a thing in the chat. Sign up for our Galactic Terrors newsletter if you want to get more news about our upcoming shows and all. We're always on the second Thursday of the month at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So our next one coming up, April 14th. And we have 3 readers, Kathleen Shiner, Trevor Firetog, and Nicholas Kaufman will be reading with us. So yay! It's going to be a great night. No, very cool. I'm looking forward to that.
Terrific.
Yeah.
All right. And if you'd like more information about the New York chapter of the Horror Writers Association, you can visit our website at hwany.org.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Excellent.
Otherwise, please like and subscribe. The YouTube provides these functions so that they can trick you into clicking, and then they track your movements.
no,
But
that's not true. That's just what our paranoid. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get me. Okay.
They're right behind you.
Thank you so much, Louie. We appreciate you subscribing. Wonderful.
Yeah. Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see. All right. Yeah. So I want to thank our audience for coming tonight. We're really grateful for you spending some time with us. We're very grateful to our authors tonight for sharing their work and reading. It's been great to have you and wonderful to hear your stories.
Thank you for having us, Carol.
Yeah,
and,
this was
and
great.
yeah, amazing night. Thank you.
Yeah. And everybody keep an eye out for all these books coming up and for the Speculative Fiction Academy and all sorts of good stuff. And John at KGB. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can pre-order Leech at johnfosterfiction.com.
Cool.
Okay.
Sorry.
All
We
right.
have that up at that's in the comments earlier, so people
Yes.
can find that to click on. Yeah. This
yeah.
recording will also appear on the YouTube channel. It takes a number of hours for it to render and do all whatever arcane things it does. But if you want to watch it again or you missed the beginning, you can come back and find it there.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you all. I hope you'll join us again next month for the next Galactic Terrors. And in the meantime, keep reading and keep writing. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.